Before we get into this video, please know that this is a theory video. Do not take anything that is said in this video as an absolute fact or final, as anything can change and probably will change. It's just an assumption based off of information that was found through various places and people. Also, for all my Valve-loving folks like myself, please take all of this incredibly lightly. And also, please do not bug or bother anyone that's mentioned in this video or any of the stuff, including Gary. Please, thank you. Okay, so this one is a video I've been thinking about doing for quite a while. I mean, like a good couple of months since I originally started talking about this more with my community. Gary started working on the official Sandbox mode in June. This is very, very important because he also mentioned that he has decided that he wanted to experiment more with mounting and add-ons, which is massive news. Now, for a lot of you that have been following the channel for a while, you probably know what I'm about to say next. But if you haven't and you're just getting caught up on this exciting news about the Sandbox mode, you're probably thinking, well, what about the Valve assets? Well, to summarize in short,
Gary had actually mentioned he was considering licensing the Half-Life Alyx assets as part of the Sandbox release, that you could use them to build it. He decided against it ultimately for two reasons. And the reasons that he posted, number one was what we discussed, where he didn't want people to feel like this is what Sandbox should look like. These are the assets that came with it. This is what you should. So that was number one. And number two is that Valve wanted, I think, another 10% of all his sales as part of their royalty fees for using their assets. And so, I think he was saying that they already take 30%. So that would be a 40% cut for them. And he would say he's not willing to do that. So
that means, what can we even mount at this point? Because you would think, well, I mean, if it's not Valve assets, then it possibly has to be other Sandbox games. Well, Gary has clarified today there will be no mounting of other Sandbox games. So at this point, what are we even mounting? I originally started talking about this with a couple other members within my Discord community that are also a part of the Sandbox community back in March of this year. And there was a commit specifically that sparked this conversation about mounting in Sandbox. So Gary then started testing with Quake in a project specifically for mounting. Duck, one of the awesome members of my community and also the Sandbox community, then noticed that there was commits being made again in the mount section of the GitHub repo, which you could see through the Facepunch commit site. But I would not be in a rush to view this yourself because they purposefully hid the repo, and probably because of working on it and most likely videos like this too. But, you know, at this point, this is probably the best time to talk about this. Again, at the time, the page was hidden, but it mentioned in the text, as Duck was talking about, that it was a commit relating to Half-Life 1 assets. Now, again, between Quake and also Half-Life 1, we understand about the engines, and specifically, I think it's like Gold Source engine. I'm not going to get too much into it, but regardless, it still relates to something that is both Quake and, of course, Half-Life 1. Most of these assumptions were based around if they give you an opportunity to mount basically any game on Steam, it would be an insane way to kind of bring some of those models and assets into Sandbox, specifically for the Sandbox mode. Now let's talk about the biggest elephant in the room, which is legality and copyright, which is a massive question. I know a lot of you are probably asking and wondering, how is that going to go with this mounting system? Doug went into detail about the possibilities, not only about the file formats, but also one-way hashes, which was a lot. But if each player is able to locally install the games that they'd want to mount on Sandbox, there would be no copyright content being transmitted over the network like it would be a Shrek asset that's just sitting on the Steam Workshop, because it's a file that's sitting on a server somewhere readily available for you to download. Now, Doug described more about the one-way hash function that Steam uses to verify files. And basically, it spits a hash number for a model or function, and the numbers are so huge that there is no chance of two pieces ever having the same hash. So again, if you have the Shrek model that's installed locally on your PC, you can then run that data through the one-way hash function, which will be unique with the exact data that you put in. At the same time, feel free to inform me if there is something that could be completely wrong, or if you'd like to inform everyone else about this, just leave a comment, because this is so much that's going on and I am genuinely interested, because this is a huge feature to have especially for something that I know a lot of people love about the concept of Sandbox, which is, by itself, the Sandbox mode. Obviously, you would have to own the game locally on your Steam account to be able to mount it. And the theories that some people had in my Discord were talking about basically if Face Punch made an API for it. Oh, they did. Okay, well, that solves that mystery. That leads us to the most recent updates of Sandbox getting an experimental treatment with the Sandbox mode and mounting add-ons that Gary is working on. So today, Gary showed off a very early look at the mounting system with the name of the game, which was Quake, and the assets that were provided. Most of these assets that he spawned were models, which was very cool to see. This can get very insane with the possibilities of what games could be used to mount into Sandbox specifically for the Sandbox mode. And this goes wildly beyond just mounting Valve games like it was on Gary's mod. Of course, that theory is this could technically work for Valve games. Again, do not take my word for that, but it could make it possible. But again, by the way that most of this is described in terms of the mounting and the systems, it seems like this could be a way to circumvent the whole thing with Valve and the assets and licensing and whatnot. Again, it's just a theory. So I just want to show this real quick because this is a really cool thing. And I know it's not the exact example of using the mounting system, which is probably going to be coming to the Sandbox game mode, but this on screen is how insane it could be. This is the Sandbox Editor, and Jayco or BoxRocket was working on Sandbox and importing things from Cyberpunk 2077. And he imported and got working a scene where Johnny Silverhand is playing at his concert in the game. This was not done again with the mounting system or the API, which is probably going to end up coming at some point. But still, in fact, that he made it possible, to me, is just so insane because the amount of possibilities and also the time that had to go into this, I can only just imagine what else you could properly import when it comes to games and just trying to make stuff in Sandbox. Now, this wasn't the first time that they have thought about implementing mounting into the game. 7 years ago, the Unreal Engine 4 version of Sandbox that they were working on, a developer had taken out the time to import the entire map of San Andreas. But being able to mount or import these things into Sandbox and for what is possible with this engine and platform is slowly starting to get more and more insane with each update. I know right now is more about experimentation and seeing things that I think Gary would love to have in Sandbox, specifically for the Sandbox mode, but I wonder how that might just translate. Will it be just limited to only the Sandbox mode since, of course, the Sandbox Editor is an engine, or will there be certain things and features that might be added from here that then get translated over into the Sandbox Editor? We don't really know, but either way, this has been quite a bit. So if you want to go and have some conversations more about this, I have my Discord, which is linked in the description down below. But if you want to know more about Sandbox, I feel this is the perfect time for that as the Sandbox mode is being worked on. So much is happening, and we already have a release date window, which you should probably learn about right here on screen. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching.